morning. It is Thursday, November 6, 2014. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, 2 vehicular terror attacks in and around Jerusalem in less than 24 hours. For the second time in 2 weeks, a Palestinian driver plows a vehicle into pedestrians and cars near a light rail station in Jerusalem. And in the West Bank, another rams his car into soldiers standing at a checkpoint. After Sweden, Britain, and Spain, France moves to vote on recognizing Palestine as a state. And later on the show, something lighter, Hugh Jackman deals with the lovable android in Chappie, the new artificial intelligence thriller. Good morning, I'm Yael Avi. We begin with breaking news. Overnight in and around Jerusalem, 2 terror attacks. 3 soldiers have been wounded in a vehicular terror attack in the West Bank just hours after 1 person was killed and 13 wounded in a similar attack in Jerusalem. Now, for the second time in 2 weeks, a Palestinian driver plowed a vehicle into pedestrians and cars near a light rail station in Jerusalem, killing 1 Israeli and injuring a dozen people. In the West Bank, 1 critically injured soldier, and the attacker in Jerusalem was a member of the Palestinian militant group Hamas, supposedly, which later praised the attack, calling it revenge for recent Israeli actions at the sacred Al-Aqsa Mosque. The statement issued yesterday afternoon by Hamas praised the attacker, an East Jerusalem resident, as the son of the movement. It also said the attack was a natural reaction to recent Israeli settler and security actions at the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, known as the Temple Mount to Jews. It's the 3rd holiest site in Islam and the holiest one for Judaism. Amid continuing tensions over the sensitive holy site in Jerusalem, Jordan also said it was recalling its ambassador from Tel Aviv for consultation. So the situation is getting muddled as we speak, and to hear the latest update from the scene, we are joined on the phone by Chief Inspector of the Israeli Police Foreign Press spokesman Mickey Rosenfeld. Mickey, good morning to you.
Good morning.
What do we know about the assailant and the attack in Jerusalem yesterday?
Well, we confirmed that the suspect was from Shuafat, and we clearly know, based on intelligence sources, that there were connections possibly with the Hamas. Yesterday was a lone terrorist who carried out the attack, taking advantage of innocent people standing on the sidewalk near the light railway in Jerusalem. Since yesterday evening, when security assessments were made, so we've set up a number of blockades in different areas, and different units that were already in Jerusalem, more than 1,000 police officers. Certain units have been transferred to other areas of the city. So we're focusing on 2 main points: stepping up security once again, and also focusing on security in and around the Old City.
In and around the Old City, there were clashes also yesterday throughout the day. People are referring to this, not even, hiding it anymore. This is, is being referred to as the Jerusalem Intifada. Would you concur, Mickey?
No, absolutely not. I wouldn't look at it on that level. That's on the level that the Israeli police are looking at the moment as well. What we are looking at is sporadic terrorist attacks that, unfortunately, we have fundamentalists that are taking advantage of the situation and desperately trying to make a serious situation develop and an ongoing developing situation. We're doing everything possible to prevent that from continuing, and that includes also heightening security, which is only one step that we're taking, and at the same time also heightening intelligence, and also the different units are working more intensively in order to find suspects, potential suspects, and obviously prevent any incidents in the Old City on the Temple Mount. And
well, Temple Mount and the Al-Aqsa Mosque last week was closed for the first time in 8 years. Today is Thursday, tomorrow is Friday. Friday prayers. Any plans to close it down again?
Well, throughout the week, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, the Temple Mount was open as regular. There were hundreds of visitors, tourists that made their way to the site. There were no problems whatsoever over the first 3 days. And then, unfortunately, on Wednesday morning, there were disturbances by masked Palestinians, 20 to 30 masked Palestinians, who barricaded themselves inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque. So police quickly responded after stones and fireworks were fired at them, and entered the Temple Mount area and dispersed the rioters quickly. Okay. So as far as we're concerned, we're looking ahead over the next 24, 48 hours, and I'm talking about what's going on in the Old City. We'll see whether there'll be heightened security, if there's any clear indications of disturbances that could be towards Friday. But our emphasis is obviously the next 24 hours, next few hours ahead of us in Jerusalem today.
Mickey Rosenfeld, Chief Spokesman for the Foreign Press in Jerusalem, thank you very much for joining us this morning. We are joined in studio by Haaretz Senior Defense Correspondent Amir Oren. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Yael.
By Ali Waqed, I-24 News Senior Middle East Analyst. Good morning to you. And before we break this down, let's take a look at the recent event. Let's take a look at the following report, which will actually recap the events in Jerusalem and the scuffles and the tension that has been part and parcel of the city for over the course of the last several months. I think we're having a bit of issues before we can show you that report. So before we move to that report, Ali, I want to ask you, I just asked Mickey Rosenfeld, can we call this a Jerusalem Intifada? I mean, this has been going on now for a month and a half, or even more than that. This is 2 months. And, you know, dancing around the issue, calling it, you know, sporadic terror attacks, this seems to be a concerted effort.
The attacks are sporadic, but they are part of a general situation in East Jerusalem, where the Palestinians feel that they need to do something against the status quo that was constantly broken by the Israeli authorities and by the Israeli associations. Yesterday I talked to a Palestinian in Jerusalem, and I called them and I asked them, who are those young who we saw in the pictures? And the answer was very interesting. This is the Elad and Ateret Kohanim generation, means that this is the generation that is reacting to the fact that the demography and the geography, geography I'm talking about the housing situation that is changing in East Jerusalem. And of course, at the top there is the situation in the Temple Mount, when the agreement of allowing Jews and others to visit is transferred, is changing to allowing the others to visit and to pray, which was not decided and agreed upon with the Jordanians and the Palestinians. All these elements turn the situation to be very explosive. And when I hear the Israeli responsible say we need to deal it in a very firm way, and which shows that it is only a security aspect, and on the other hand give the Palestinians some more privileges in the social security, etc., we are talking about a generation that is different to the generation of 5 and 10 years ago. This is a generation that want to be part of another entity, not the city of Jerusalem under an Israeli mayor, not the city of Jerusalem united under the Israeli government, and dealing with the situation only from the security aspect, and only from giving the Palestinians some more shekels and hoping that their political identity will change and their political reaction to what is happening on the ground. And what is happening on the ground yesterday, Yael, the Israeli boots were yesterday inside the mosque, not only in the compound of the Temple Mount, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, but inside the mosque, reaching the stage where the preacher speaks in Fridays, which is according to the Muslim religion, the Salah ad-Din stage. These are lines that that the Palestinians, and we saw yesterday the Jordanian reaction also.
The Jordanian reaction to the entrance of IDF boots, as you say, into Temple Mount. Speaking of Jerusalem, exactly as Ali Walker just said, let's take a look at the following report about what has been going on in Jerusalem over the course of the last several weeks, and that led us to this point. Let's take a look.
The last few weeks has raised the tension in Jerusalem to new heights. Religion, politics, and vengeance have all come together as one crisis follows another. At the beginning of October, clashes broke out at the Temple Mount compound, holy to both Jews and Muslims, as Palestinians protested against Jews visiting the Flashpoint holy site ahead of the Jewish holidays. On October 22nd, after weeks of tensions in the city, a Palestinian man rammed into pedestrians waiting at a light railway station in Jerusalem. 2 women and a baby died in this incident. Israel held the Palestinian Authority responsible.
President Abbas himself, unfortunately, continues to use inflammatory rhetoric.
On October 29, Yehuda Glick, an Israeli activist, was shot outside a conference promoting allowing Jews to pray on the Temple Mount. Glick was apparently shot by a Palestinian activist from the eastern neighborhood of Abu Tur. Israel did not wait long to respond to the shooting incident. Just a few hours after the event, Israeli forces shot dead Mu'taz Hijazi, suspected of shooting Glick. Hijazi's family was also arrested. The days following Glick's shooting were highly tense in the old city's Temple Mount. Jews' right-wing activists tried to enter the site by force, and Palestinian protesters clashed with police. The rage at Temple Mount has spread beyond the old city walls. Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah addressed the issue in a rare public appearance in front of thousands during a Shia Ashura Day rally.
This is not scaremongering or exaggerating. There is a real and serious danger facing this mosque and this holy site. And this is the responsibility of all the Muslims worldwide, not just the residents of Jerusalem alone.
The latest incident, the second of its kind in the last 2 weeks, adds another part in a chain of events. Israeli police are trying to ease the tension in Jerusalem, but this could just be the beginning of a lengthy cycle of violence, threatening to inflame the entire region.
We're also joined in studio by Rabbi Dov Lipman of Yesh Atid Party. He's a Knesset minister. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Before anything else, though, Amir Owen, senior defense analyst and correspondent for Haaretz. Well, the same question to you. When it comes to a third intifada, and is from a defense point of view, is Israel ready to actually confront something like that in Jerusalem?
Well, it's really pointless to try and define it and dance around the definitions and the headlines and the titles, whether it's an intifada or not. What is obvious, as the British rulers of the former colonies used to say, the natives are restless, and with good reason. 14 years ago, when Ariel Sharon went to Temple Mount, it was a cold and calculated move by a politician, which happened to be successful because a few months later he was prime minister. Yes. And Ehud Barak, of course, failed at not preventing it. He could have prevented Sharon from going to Temple Mount. This time around, it's coming from activists or militants on the Jewish side, which Benjamin Netanyahu, again, fails to confront because they are supported by members of his own party, the ruling party, Likud. And within the Likud, Netanyahu doesn't want to fight those people who are probably stronger than he is. So the upshot is that the security forces are faced with an event they cannot control. It really is pointless to throw hundreds of police and border patrolmen into various boroughs of East Jerusalem when a single person can take a vehicle and drive into any target, and putting those concrete blocks is really ludicrous, because then they will go to other targets, not necessarily the train, but some other pedestrian walking on another sidewalk. One has to take care of the root causes. And the root causes are, to some extent, social and economic, but there is a deeper problem of the occupation and annexation, and as Ali said, these are the grandchildren of the occupation. In 1987, exactly 20 years after 67, the first generation, the children of the occupation, started the uprising. Yeah. And now what we see is that there is resentment. One doesn't have to conspire. It is enough to inspire. There is no need now for some organization to get together, to get weapons to anybody, because whether by preaching or through the internet or the social networks, a person can simply feel that this is the right time. Perhaps yesterday morning, when the perpetrator awoke, he didn't even know that this was what he was going to do. So there is no possibility for any intelligence agency to find out about it and prevent
the action of a disgruntled person. Right. Speaking of the assailant and responsibility being assumed for the action for the terror attacks yesterday in and around Jerusalem, we're joined on the phone by Dimitri Diliani, member of the Fatah Revolutionary Council from Jerusalem. Dimitri, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Hamas has come out stating that they welcome the attack in Jerusalem. Many outlets are reporting it as if Hamas is taking responsibility. That's problematic somewhat for the Fatah government, actually, that's now united with Hamas, isn't it?
Not really, because our position on violence is different. Fatah condemns all kind of violence on both sides. And we were expecting the Israeli government to have the same position, but unfortunately they're not, because they are the ones that are committing the violence against Palestinian civilians. Hamas, just like the Israeli right-wing extremists, they thrive on violence. They pray for more blood and more chaos. That's how they get to power. That's how Netanyahu and his gang got to power, and before him Sharon. And this is how Hamas won the 2006 legislative elections. So for them, blood, whether it was Israeli or Palestinian, it's a commodity that puts them into power. Now, as what happened yesterday, Jerusalem has been on fire since July the 2nd.
Right.
Jerusalem has paid the price of 7 Palestinians being killed, 1,000 injured, and 900 arrested. 420 of them went to Israeli courts, were presented to courts, with tightened and much harsher punitive laws that have been approved by the Israeli government. In a way, it proves that the Israeli government is not only looking to tighten the living conditions of the Palestinians, but looking forward also to make it much harder for any Palestinian to feel comfortable living in Jerusalem. And with the incitement coming straight from the government and actions on Al-Aqsa Mosque, all this drives anybody with a little bit of zeal to do whatever comes to mind, with no control either from the Palestinian Authority or its security forces or the Israeli intelligence. So therefore, we are the Israeli government and its support, whether it was financial, legal, political, to these Jewish terror groups.
Then I have a question. If you, as you said at the beginning of your answer, that Fatah condones violence on any side, why doesn't the Palestinian administration or Mahmoud Abbas come out and say that he condones that type of violence, and maybe that can also progress.
Yes.
Progress actually not flaring the situation up, not creating more animosities. Why is that not a reaction to yesterday's action?
For many reasons. One of them is Israel has not come out in any statement at any point condemning actions of violence that got Palestinians killed. Maybe that was one, Hamad Abu Khdeir, that was one time, but before that, the Palestinian president condemned all actions that were committed against Israelis. But at the same time, the Israeli media is not shedding the light on the Palestinian victims. For example, when the first incident of running over people at the train station took place, 2 days and killed one Colombian woman, I think. 2 days before that, an Israeli settler ran over 2 Palestinian children near Nablus, and nobody mentioned that. Yesterday, there was a Palestinian, only yesterday, a Palestinian was killed by Israeli settler driver near Nablus. The Israeli media did not even mention that. And therefore, sometimes I pity the fact that the Israeli people who live in a Jewish exclusive democracy do not have access to the whole picture. I mean, I can understand if this is happening in Iran. I would understand.
Dimitri, I know. We're trying to give the whole picture, but do stay with us, because I'm also joined by Parliament member from Yesh Atid, Rabbi Dov Lippman. Thank you for being here with us this morning. And Dimitri, you're still in line with us, still here with Amir on. I do have a question for you, because there are people who did state, their animosities, stated their opinions yesterday within the Israeli government. I think we have a short clip to show us a few reactions from the Israeli government yesterday to this. To the attacks yesterday in Jerusalem.
Abu Mazen is the driver of the terror vehicles in Jerusalem. The terrorists are his messengers. It's time the world and Israel treated the Fatah Hamas government as an authority of terror, because it's Abu Mazen who is inciting these terrorists. It's Abu Mazen who's funding them. It's Abu Mazen who's hugging and kissing them when they're let free. It's time we treat them as such, and we treat every stone thrower as a potential murderer. Thank you.
The Israeli government is the one who changed the status quo, who provoked the people of Jerusalem into the horrible things that are happening now. This is part of the huge refusal of this government and Netanyahu in general to do anything that will bring us closer to peace, but rather prefers to manage the conflict as if the conflict is manageable. While he wants to manage the conflict, he keeps the conflict alive and kicking, and this does no good to anyone.
We saw two very different reactions from Naftali Bennett. He's actually the leader of the Jewish House. Merav there, Merav, she's actually the opposition. Clearly not in government. But your party sits in the government with Naftali Bennett. Very harsh words. He's actually pointing the finger directly at Abbas. So does the Israeli Prime Minister. Your party believes in a two-state solution, hopes for reconciliations, hopes to sit at the table. How can this help?
First of all, just want to send my condolences to the family, and let's emphasize, a family of a border policeman, Assad, who's not Jewish. The member of the Palestinian Council talked about the Jewish exclusive civilization here, and here you have an example of someone who's not Jewish, who is serving in the border police, who was killed yesterday, and we send our condolences, and also we hope that everyone has a speedy recovery who was hurt yesterday. We in Yesh Atid as well, who do believe in two states for two people, who do believe we have to find a solution to the conflict, we also point a finger at the leadership on the Palestinian side in this situation. The moment that Yehuda Glick last week is shot, the notion that a condolence letter is sent to the terrorist who killed him, the notion that there is not a condemnation, the notion that even the fellow you had on the phone a moment ago says in the car attack last week, we think that maybe a Colombian visitor was killed. There was a 3-month-old baby that was killed, and yes, there was a person from Ecuador who was killed as well. The facts are the facts. You heard Nasrallah before saying that we're somehow rising up against Al-Aqsa. We're not. The misinformation, and the term I have to use is a libel against us in terms of the situation, is...
But isn't it the fact that the status quo of Temple Mount was, there were talks about changing it? Isn't the fact that throughout these scuffles, you have soldiers coming into Temple Mount?
We've made it very clear that the status quo is not going to change. There is no attempt to take over the Al-Aqsa Mosque. There is no attempt to limit in any way the Palestinian rights there. There's no initiative for us to change the Jewish status there. It's all incitement, and the incitement has to stop. The moment that incitement stops, the moment Abbas is not together with Hamas, who calls the person yesterday, the terrorist, a hero, we are completely willing to sit together. Let's remember, yesterday we commemorated Prime Minister Rabin's the anniversary of his death, 19 years. When he was involved in the negotiations and moving forward, there's no doubt that played a role in restoring calm in the area. Israel was building in Jerusalem when that was happening, and that was understood because we were moving towards a resolution to the conflict. We need to be moving towards a resolution to the conflict. In order for that to happen, we call on President Abbas to denounce the partnership with Hamas, to condemn all acts of terrorism. We certainly would condemn any act of terrorism from the Jewish side. I do call on the Jewish side to also reduce the tensions, not to do anything to incite the other side. But at the moment, even we in Yesh Atid say that President Abbas's words and actions these last few days in particular, he is held accountable for what is happening.
And before we continue with incitement and who said what to whom, and I'm wondering out loud with you, Amion, because we're looking at this, buildings around Jerusalem and whatnot. Still, when it comes to the situation right now on the ground, right? The situation right now on the ground, it looks like you can't avoid protecting certain parts of Jerusalem, even if it's one-man bands who are creating these attacks, with more military, more soldiers, and isn't that going to create actually more animosities? And we're heading towards something that is already past the point of flare-up.
It's really ironic, and the member of Knesset Lippman mentioned it, that Netanyahu spoke yesterday at the memorial event for Yitzhak Rabin, because 19 years ago, Netanyahu and his friends denied that their incitement had anything to do with the fact that a lone assassin, Yigal Amir, pulled the trigger. And now they are blaming Abbas for his incitement and finding some correlation between his words and the deeds of anyone. Now, the fact on the ground is that Abbas is controlling his security services. This is the most important part. The security services of the Palestinian Authority, who do not operate in Jerusalem proper, they are operating in the West Bank, are doing their job. They are cooperating, some of their enemies would say collaborating, with the Israeli security forces, and are helping prevent terror attacks as much as they can, and this is under the guidance of Abbas. Yes, of course, Abbas is trying to appeal to his electorate. He cannot be far removed from what is happening on the ground, but what is happening on the ground is being inflamed by both sides. It's very convenient for Netanyahu to start telling the story having the narrative from the second chapter on, ignoring what he or under his jurisdiction was done before in the first chapter. So, and as for your question regarding the operational measures, it does help to have those hundreds of police and border patrolmen in certain neighborhoods. But again, this is just trying to keep the flames down. This will not help the problem, help the root causes of the problem, because one must have some political initiative. What we saw earlier regarding what is happening in France, in Sweden, and elsewhere in recognizing the Palestinian state signals Israel that the status quo is untenable politically, not only on Temple Mount. What has been done or not done up to now cannot go on. Something
has to give. And really quickly to you, Knesset Minister Lippman, when you said incitement on the Palestinian side, but you know, there's those who will argue that basically on the Israeli side, people buying houses in Silwan that is predominantly Palestinian, and we know the reason that those houses are being bought by Jews, that in itself is also an inciting move.
We for sure might take a step back and say that shouldn't be done, but to make a suggestion that somehow because of that in any way should somehow connect the dot to a person getting into a car and driving and killing people in cold blood is something which we do not accept. Should it not be done? It should not be done. Should we try to avoid raising the tensions? We should. But let's condemn murderers, let's condemn terrorism, let's get back to talking as people who want to resolve a conflict instead of what seems like on the other side, certainly people who want to inflame the conflict and certainly lend a hand to the killing of more innocent people.
One should lessen friction. One should not add to the friction.
And even, let's not suggest that that's the cause. That's not the cause.
But even if legally or legalistically one can justify moving into a certain neighborhood, it is not wise. We saw it in Hebron. We saw it in other places. Let Israelis, not only Jews, let Israelis live in their own neighborhoods. Let Palestinians live in their own neighborhoods. Mingle in the streets. That's fine. In business, in other places, they shouldn't live next to each other. It is not conducive to peace.
I'm in agreement, but let's not again suggest that that's the cause of what's been happening as of late. It doesn't help, but let's remember we have terrorism, we have terrorists, let's condemn them, and I call on President Abbas and everyone on the Palestinian side to do so. That was what ultimately will lead us to sitting together and hopefully resolving the conflict.
We have to remember, though, that President Abbas also caters to a group of people that's not just necessarily Israeli, also has to maintain a certain
It takes a lot of courage, I agree.
But that's a discussion that we can continue and continue. Sure. Thank you for joining us today, Knesset Minister Lippman, of course, Amir Owen, Dimitri Diliani on the phone from Jerusalem. We will bring you updates throughout the day from Jerusalem. And when we get back, France moves to vote on Palestine as a state. Tell you all about that. Before anything else, though, let's hear some more of the morning headlines. Good morning. Thank you for staying with us. I-24 News Morning Edition. It is November 6th. Thank you.
Yes. Well, one day before the 7th.
Exactly. Yes. One day before the 7th. Tumultuous day here in the Middle East. And this is Tony Grant with the news you missed while scanning the headlines.
Well, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Of course, we haven't missed this headline right from the Times of Israel about Netanyahu pointing the finger at Abbas for a Jerusalem terror attack yesterday. So we know the story. But, you know, I think the headline, we didn't miss the headline, but a detail that I think a lot of people may have missed, which is why I left it in this morning to lead off with, is that, you know, the victim in this, Jadon Assad, of course, is Israeli Druze.
Israeli Druze.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say it's ironic, but it's an added level of, I think, you know, tragedy in a way.
Yeah, so it was actually mentioned also by Knesset Minister Dov, Rabbi Lippman.
For those who don't know, Druze is an offshoot of Islam.
Of Islam,
yes. Yeah. And it's just a horrible
the irony is that we're all casualties of this conflict.
Absolutely.
And with that headline, though, I'm glad you brought up, because the, you know, the blaming that comes after these horrific terror attacks, exactly, just makes you think, you know, why fuel more of this? But I'm with you on that completely. Yes. Go ahead.
On an interrelated note, this is also from a day ago, but did you know that Naftali Bennett, who is Israel's, of course, Minister of the Economy, wrote an op-ed piece in the New York Times?
Yes.
Yeah, which interesting timing, and basically. With a lovely cartoon there as well. He's saying for Israel, two-state is no solution, and he's talking about he has a four-step plan for bottom-up peace, dealing with giving more autonomy to areas A and B in the West Bank, infrastructure improvements. But the question here is he speaking on behalf of the Israeli government in writing this, or is it just his own
That's a question that many will argue. We wonder.
On behalf of the government, he's just a member of the government.
Oh, yeah.
There's no reason.
Well, he's
just one of them. No, but Daniel said a good point, and I want to ask you, and Tony, have you noticed that the New York Times has become the stage of op-eds for Israeli politicians and Iranians?
And
right?
Let's not forget Putin, penned a statement about a year ago.
So
exactly. Anything that and Putin has I in the name. But I'm wondering, I'm just,
I think it would be more logical if Bennett were going to write about strictly economic matters. But it seems to me that there's another agenda on the plate, which for better or for worse.
I know,
when you write it in the New York Times, the world is watching.
The world is watching, although, there are people who will argue that, all my friends on the Upper West Side are opening the newspaper going, what do these people want from us? What's on sale today?
Attention.
Yes, there we go.
Yes. Speaking of attention, we've got shifting back to the results of yesterday's big election, or Tuesday's in America. Times of London has a great headline about Sarah Palin's successor apparent. We're talking about Joni Ernst, the Harley-riding, gun-slinging, hog-castrating grandmother.
I'm leaning back. I'm just so glad you brought this in.
Yeah,
yes.
Not that Sarah Palin has really gone anywhere. I mean, she's still doing her
dust. Sarah Palin, have you seen Joni Ernst?
Her victory speech, she said she was going to make Washington big spenders squeal.
Yes.
So, the colorful language is back.
You know what comes to mind? Dun, 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 dun. Deliverance, the movie.
Oh.
Yes, okay.
I wouldn't have gone back that far, but yeah. But, speaking of projecting things, she wants to project U.S. power more proactively. And that's, when you sift through
with
all this sort of... with forceful language, with hogs being castrated. I don't know, but for her, it's about power.
It's about power. And pigs.
And pigs, hogs. Iowa, of course, being, very important to the hog economy.
I'm getting so excited, I'm choking.
Shift to the East Coast. Long Island Press reports, of course, now 34-year-old Republican Lee Zeldin, who is a new congressman from New York to Washington. He is now the only Jewish, I believe, a Republican right now in Congress, and he replaces, not replaces, but Eric Cantor is out in an internal party primary months ago. So, and he's 34 and kind of
I was about to say, he's a baby.
He looks like he's about 12.
And look at how far we've come. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Well,
I
know.
On the hill.
Bar mitzvah on the hill. Yeah, maybe he had a bar mitzvah in Israel. I'll have to check that out.
You have to.
Yeah.
Yes.
Back here, of course, in the Middle East, this headline yesterday from France 24, Syria al-Qaeda chief has threatened Lebanon over Hezbollah's role in Syria. Quite vocally, they released an audio message online. This is the al-Nusra Front, and they've said that the real battle in Lebanon has yet to begin, and they want Hezbollah's involvement, of course, in Syria's civil war to end. Probably won't get their way, but again, it's pointing to more problems there.
That's a very PC way of putting it. Yes.
More violence, basically.
More violence. More violence
is in store when you get messages like that coming
Tony,
out.
I think you and I, after, at a certain point in our life, we're going to have to, go report news from the Seychelles or something like that.
I think that's where Paul McCartney went on his honeymoon with what's the one wife back?
The one wife
Heather
back.
Mills?
Heather Mills, exactly. I don't think there's much violence there.
Yeah, a lot of honeymoons.
A lot of honeymoons. Yes,
speaking of things that on a softer note, Politico reports that also after the elections, Berkeley, out in California, is the nation's first city apparently to actually successfully tax soda. So this is something that actually former New York Mayor Mike Bloomberg.
I was about to say this is
it's his pet cause.
The pet cause, the attempt to stop obesity. Good luck on that one. In the United States.
Right. I mean, and for some reason, Bloomberg has been at war with fizzy drinks for a long time. But he pumped in like $650,000 that he
his
put in.
campaign on fizzy drinks.
Yeah, it's going to be a penny per ounce tax.
Really?
And it does not apply to diet soda.
Bizarre. Okay, well, that would, the big gulp is going down.
The big gulp, I think a picture
Yeah,
of
that
it.
was a gulp. Yeah, the big gulp is going
and
down.
And Berkeley, the article is saying, is Berkeley going to set the trend here, or is it still an outlier? And I don't know.
Berkeley is a trendsetter.
In a way.
I think Berkeley has been.
With many ways.
In more ways. And for many, many decades.
And for many decades. Yeah. Nice.
I lived there.
Ah.
In Berkeley, but in San Francisco, across the bridge.
Yeah. I've never actually been there. It's just a cool place.
Yeah.
You should.
And one last one.
Marijuana has now been legalized as for recreation.
Not in the Middle East, clearly.
Not in the Middle East, but in Alaska. Hey, Sarah Palin. Oregon, Washington, D.C.
I think if you got Sarah Palin living next door, you got to smoke some up.
Or something. Mm-hmm.
Or something, yes.
But this is, marijuana is apparently the new cigarette in many respects in these states.
Listen, and there are those who will argue, which is becoming my new favorite phrase, that maybe it is, marijuana that will help all people in the Middle East to just chill out.
Well, I think in the Middle East they prefer hash.
They prefer hash.
But in some countries it's legal, and some it's not.
And some it's not. Okay, there we have it. Tony, thank you so much. Stay with us, and of course for the next hour as well. On to our next topic. France's ruling Socialist Party wants the parliament to recognize a Palestinian state, following a similar move by Sweden, Britain, and, moves that are supposed to overcome an impasse in peacemaking, but which, for all the obvious reasons, anger Israel. To hear more about what is becoming a European trend of recognizing Palestine unilaterally as a state, we are joined in studio by former Israeli ambassador to France and member of Hatnoa political party, Daniel Sheikh. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
And joining us from London is I-24 News European correspondent Jonathan Sashadati. Jonathan, good morning to you as well.
Good morning.
Just to start with you real quick, France this time around announcing this has come as actually a move by the ruling party to the parliament to approve this?
Well, we had the non-binding vote in the UK Parliament, and then we had Sweden, which became the third Western European nation to opt for Palestinian recognition after Malta and Cyprus, with some Eastern European countries recognizing a Palestinian state during the Cold War. And then we had, in her first newspaper interview as successor to Britain's Catherine Ashton, Federica Mogherini, the former Italian foreign minister, telling reporters on Monday that Sweden's recent recognition of a Palestinian state did not necessarily represent other EU states' stances on the issue, but she would like to see a Palestinian state actually formed within her time in office. And now, as you say, we have this question of the ruling Socialist Party in France preparing a motion for debate in Parliament on French recognition of a Palestinian state. So there is definitely a wave of recognition sweeping across Europe, or a wave from some parts, especially on the left, to push for that recognition. There's some confusion over what it even means within each member state.
No, which is a very good point you raised, and you're staying with us, of course, Jonathan Sachadati from Europe. Daniel Sheikh, former ambassador to France. What does that, it doesn't mean much, so to speak, but the French, at this point, what is behind that, and why does it scare so many people in Israel?
Oh, those are two very different questions. First of all, personally, I don't think it should scare anybody here. First of all, because the more noise you make and the more hysterical your reaction, the more damage actually happens, because in the real world, this doesn't change anything. To begin with, a majority of the nations of the world already recognizes the Palestinian state, 130-something, if I'm not mistaken, and the discussion now is just over the Western European countries and countries that count, quote unquote, the ones that really hurt. And I think it's an inevitable trend. If you're a French parliamentarian, even if you didn't wake up in the morning and say, I have to do something for the Palestinian state today, if somebody else takes the initiative, you don't want to be the one to raise your hand against it, and I don't think that there will be many who will do it. It's a highly symbolic act. It doesn't cost much politically, and it's very popular in your support base. So people ask, yeah, of course, there's a large Muslim community in France, etc., which is true. But the thing is that in France, there might be a 10% Muslim minority, but the remaining 90% are in favor of a Palestinian state too, as is most of the world. So it's not an act that will cost the, quote unquote, the French government any real political or economic price. It's just a message that they're sending to our region saying, guys, if you can't do anything to move forward, then we will try and nudge you, even if in reality not much is going to happen for the Palestinian living in the West Bank.
So the argument that unilaterally recognizing Palestine as a state actually hinders the peace process, that's something that the Israeli government keeps maintaining.
Well, you know, it's a point of view. I'm certainly in favor of a negotiated peace agreement with the Palestinians, and I don't think that unilateral recognition will make this process redundant. We will still need to sit down and negotiate that thing. But on the other hand, with growing support both in the Arab and Palestinian camp, in some parts of the Israeli fringes on the left and on the right, and worldwide, for a one-state solution, personally, I think that any move that sort of makes the point of the need of a two-state solution is not necessarily a bad thing, and therefore I'm not quite sure why Israel should react in such a strong and forceful manner as Israel did with Sweden, for example, with the recall of the ambassador, etc. I hope this is not going to be the norm, because otherwise many of my former colleagues in the foreign ministry will have very long vacations in Israel if they will all be recalled back.
Speaking of that, if this is becoming the trend, Jonathan Sachadori, in Europe, because the Israeli foreign ministry claims this is because everybody hates Israel, etc., etc. You know, the argument that, as Daniel Sheikh just raised, that this is happening because there's an Islamization in Europe, doesn't really, you know, is that the reality? I mean, Israel is just not very popular nowadays, is it?
I'm not sure that is particularly the ultimate be-all and end-all, the ultimate reason behind all of this. It's quite complicated to pick apart why something like this is happening, but it's not the case that it is a fait accompli, that this is really something pushed by public opinion across the world, across Europe, and that this is what everybody thinks and wants. So Malcolm Rifkin, speaking in the UK parliamentary debate, was very clear that he, of course, like most people, would like to see a Palestinian state existing and living in peace side by side with Israel. However, he spoke against the motion because he said that so far recognizing a state that doesn't have any of the actual mechanisms of statehood is somewhat peculiar and contradictory on the part of Britain. And so people like him have argued plenty that there is no actual room for recognition of a state right now when it's quite clear that a state doesn't exist. The reason a state doesn't exist we can argue about until kingdom come, whether or not it's because of intransigence on the part of the Palestinians or on the part of Israel. But what we can be sure of is that he's right. There is no Palestinian state in any real sense at the moment. There is a sort of Palestinian state in Gaza. There is a sort of less sort of Palestinian state in the West Bank. There is the state of Jordan, which some will even go as far as to say was meant originally to have been the division of the Palestinian Mandate Section 4
that's
Palestinians.
Something that, you know, angers many Palestinians.
Of course it does. And of course, so what we're dealing with really is a situation where we have arguments made on all sides that argue either side, leaving us in a situation where people feel helpless. And I think above all else, that's the reason why these votes are being pursued and pushed through. It's a part on the, it's an effort on the part of the Palestinians to push for unilateralism in the rest of the world because they feel they're not getting where they need to in any kind of negotiation within the peace process. But also it shows some level of confusion because it's gesture politics. If these countries are able to show some sort of solidarity with Palestinians, they feel by voting that there's recognition of a state that really doesn't yet exist, though people would like it to. It does seem rather odd that there is this desire to put something into existence by voting on its existence.
Or maybe even just, you know, maybe even just push the two sides and the two sides to try and put something into existence. To fill a void. You know, no one knows, but we're trying to be, you know, semi-optimistic about all of this on this very drear morning. Jonathan Sachadori from London, thank you for joining us. Daniel Sheikh, thank you for being with us this morning. When we get back, something completely different, slightly lighter. Hugh Jackman deals with a lovable android in Chappie, the new artificial intelligence thriller. We'll tell you all about it. First, though, the news. Welcome back. It is still Thursday, November 6, 2014. This is still the morning edition. I am Stelia Elavi. Thank you for staying with us. 2 terror attacks in and around Jerusalem yesterday. one in Jerusalem right next to the light rail station. Actually, just a little bit over a week since another attack in the same place, and one in the West Bank. And we are joined from Jerusalem, where tensions are high right now, by I-24 News correspondent Danny Swibel. Danny, good morning to you.
Good morning, yeah.
Do let us know. Tensions high. We're hearing a lot of security. Yes.
We're here right now. You could just see maybe behind me that the morning commute is just beginning. Children are going to school. People are waiting for the train to go to work. You would not believe that just a day ago, a man identified as Ibrahim Al-Akri drove his car onto the train tracks and ran over pedestrians, one of them succumbing to his wounds. The people I talked to here said that 10 years ago, people were concerned about perhaps getting on a bus and worrying that that would explode. But now they're here vulnerable, just waiting for the bus or the train. And it's worrisome, but people have been going about their day. The Jerusalem mayor, Nir Barkat, said, we will not succumb to fear. We will go about our lives. And it seems here that people are doing just that. Israeli security forces just behind me put a concrete barrier to prevent a vehicle from driving up onto the railway, and as another precaution to perhaps protect the citizens. But again, the people I talked to said they still feel vulnerable, right, and they hope that these things aren't a continuing, reoccurring theme.
Right, and Danny Swibel joining us from Jerusalem this morning, where, as we mentioned, thank you very much, where, as we mentioned, there were two attacks yesterday in the West Bank, one in Jerusalem, one in the West Bank. Tensions are high in the city. It is Thursday, tomorrow, Friday in the Middle East. All eyes are on Jerusalem as usual. Friday prayer is a time that tends to be very tense in a very bad month that city has seen. But we are moving on to something slightly lighter in this region. Yes, I've got two beautiful women next to me. Yeah, all of us like sitting like this. So, Netta Achitov, start with you. Environmental news, do tell me anything and everything environmental to try and protect this planet that we human beings are doing such a good job destroying.
Yes.
In so many ways, a variety of ways. So what do you have for me
today?
We
have actually two animals today. Two different species.
Thank you.
Yes.
Right? Because we need something nice. Yay!
But let's start with two very interesting conferences in the Arab world. The first one is the Solar Arabia Summit. It's in Saudi Arabia, and this is the biggest solar panel energy summit in the world. It's the fourth time that it's happening. 250 solar buyers, sellers, and decision makers meet there and
Saudi Arabia, of all places.
and talk about it. Yeah. It's not a coincidence. Saudi Arabia is really into solar panels and solar energy because they know that by 2032 they won't be able to supply all the electricity, all the energy they need through their oil. They are the largest oil producers, but they are also the largest renewable energy market in the world.
It's actually it's such great forward thinking, because Saudi Arabia is based on all the money and simplifying the story now. It makes out of oil, and because that's depleting and going out, they're actually moving into the the alternative.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which tells you that it's financial and that there's no other choice.
Nice.
I think these are the two conclusions.
Yes, you have to go there.
They're very, very into it. Actually, in 2012, the government invested $100 billion in renewable energy in Saudi Arabia. Yes. Yes, we shouldn't underestimate the...
No. And, maybe if it starts there, it can, sift to the rest of the world.
Exactly.
Yes, what else?
And the second one is also interesting. It's in Qatar, and it's a landscape architect conference that took place this week. And you know that in 2022, the World Cup will be in Qatar, so they're really interested in urban public spaces and landscaping, and how do you,
and building Babylon-style towers.
But how do you overcome water scarcity, bad soil, arid climate, a very, very warm summer? And this is what they were talking about for 2 days. And all the best landscape architects in the world arrived there and met, the networking, met decision makers, and they are the theme, I think, of the conference is like human scale. We should invest in neighborhoods and pedestrians, less cars. So maybe we are stepping into a better future.
Better future, and and optimistic things coming out of this region.
It's really funny that you're saying optimistic because you know that in every bad thing there is
I love
something
it.
good.
She's becoming Tony Grant, who has like the best moves from one item to the other. And if you're already speaking of optimistic, yes.
Yes, so in every, this saying in Hebrew, it's very popular that in every bad thing you can always find,
a good thing?
Yes, exactly. So, Sandy, you remember her 2 years ago.
Yes, the crazy hurricane, the Franken hurricane.
Exactly. 159 people died, 650,000 homes were destroyed. And, you thought it's the worst thing that could happen. But apparently the storm opened 2 breaches. And now clean water, for the first time since the 70s, can pour into the coast. And actually the clams are back, seals are back. It's the first time in decades that the water are clear in the area. This is in upstate New York.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, unbelievable.
And it's really, they are...
Yeah, I heard that nature is actually more powerful than it can renew itself. Forest, if there's too much forest, like a trees in a forest, it burns itself.
So after disasters,
you're saying nature will survive us.
Yes.
Okay.
So
we can keep trying to destroy it. It will come back. Yes.
So the Atlantic Ocean in this part of the world is actually feels good lately.
Optimistic stuff, yes. More women in the studio. Go ahead.
Promised animals.
Animals,
So meet Tango. She's 11 years old jaguar. We'll see her in a second. She's... no, this is not the way you should see her.
Yeah, okay.
She's alive.
Everything is okay. We're going to kill her now. Okay.
Everything is okay. They're actually taking blood, semen, and hair from
why? Because somebody doesn't believe it's his baby? No.
No, because they want to save the species.
Aha. Okay.
Yes. She lives in the zoo, but she's actually the key to, not she, it lives in the zoo.
It lives in the zoo,
about semen,
And jaguars are going extinct?
And they're going extinct, and this is the key to, to make them still here among us later on. In our lives. There are actually 10 felon species in Argentina and 200 jaguars only left in the world.
Really?
Yes, and
how did
most
that
of them
happen?
are in
Did we
Argentina.
kill them all? It's us, isn't it? We killed them all.
Yes, it's development.
We killed them all for what? What
do you get?
And for the fur. The fur is very, very popular. In the 60s and 70s, 18,000 jaguars were killed for their fur.
For the fur.
And also their habitat is really, under
I'm losing
development.
faith in us, as the phrase goes, losing faith in
60%
mankind.
of their habitat around the world is now cities.
Okay.
Yes.
Rural
area.
We destroy their homes and we kill them. Nice.
Yes,
okay.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
But
let's on a happy note.
Yes, optimistic note. Costa Rica is the most biodiverse country in the world, and they just found out they knew about this frog, but it's the first time they're able to capture it. You have to see it to believe it.
Frogs in camouflage.
They are 20 millimeters long. They are really. It's very, very hard to see them because they are green as the leaves.
We're yet to see them, but that's because they're in camouflage, folks.
Exactly, they're very camouflaged. They're the most camouflaged creatures in the world.
That's why you are not. Aha!
See them!
Wow!
This is the tadpoles. They're being hatched, and they're actually the frog lay the eggs on the leaf, and then when they're hatched, they just fall to the river.
Yeah. Okay. And they fall to the river, and then
they swim to the side of the river.
That's a cute. Aha! Oh my God! Camouflage, so you don't see them actually on a leaf or anything like that. That's
you need special equipment, of course, to see them, and the research is very,
Remember we said that
special there's about this. What do they do? That's so special besides
they are the most camouflaged creatures in the world. It's the first
time
they're been photographed ever and ever. Yes,
and
this is
why?
The first time we can actually
It's amazing. I feel bad for them because I think they're camouflaged knowing that we kill all the animals.
Yes.
So they're like, no, we're just gonna,
There's some animals you can't see, so you can't
kill.
Get
the camera away. Yeah. Okay.
They make no sound, which is also very
They are
typical.
scared. They are scared.
You're like the perfect pet.
They're the perfect pet.
They are the perfect pet. Netta, thank you. You're locked in the studio with us because that's what we do to everybody. And we move on to even happier news. It's happier news, right?
Well, it's cinema.
It's cinema, exactly. It's light news. It's what we need on mornings like this at times.
Actually, happy news, we are going from animals to robots, which has no transition.
From past to the future. From past to the future. And
actually, a pet robot, kind of. This is the first look at Chappie, which is a cute little robot invented by Neil Blomkamp, who's the director of District 9. It's his new
District 9 I loved.
it's this new movie coming out, and we're going to see footage of it right away.
Yes, hold on. This is Chappie?
Yes. This
Chappie's
is
supposed to be cute?
I thought I thought we were going to watch some. I thought we were going to watch some footage. Where's the sound? Because you have to hear me.
Yeah, let's hear it. Hold on. Let's hear it.
Think and feel.
That's it. Come here, little buddy.
That's a watch. This is clearly a futuristic world, right?
Yes.
And Chappie is like the cat
So no, Chappie has been invented by this engineer played by Dev Patel, who we know from Slumdog Millionaire, who I love. Nice little engineer that invented this robot, this AI, and this AI will be raised in a family of people that are not good for AI, for robots.
Right.
So they will just dump him somewhere, and he will be found by this couple of very weird people who are played by Ninja and Yolandi from the group Die Antwoord.
Okay.
And if you don't know Die Antwoord, which means the answer in English, it's an African rap band, South African rap band that has been a huge hit on the internet with their first music video. They did 55 million viewers. It was extremely weird music video. Called Ninja, which I found some footage of, which we can see right now. So this couple, there we go. So it's this man and this woman. So they're raising. This is the video that was a 55 million viewer, and if you hear it, it's absolutely
can we hear this?
Creepy.
Hold on. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, it's a little... Whoa! Morning! Whoa!
Yes. Good morning. Good morning, world. Anyway, they're going to raise the robots as their own child. They're actually the nice person.
From South Africa.
From South Africa. They're the most
Hollywood?
famous. They're the most famous South African rappers, and it's their first movie. That's the Neil Blomkamp is South African himself.
As well, right?
He's shooting in Johannesburg as he did for District 9,
which was a fabulous movie. I love
amazing Academy Award nominated movie. And so Chappie is very expected. Everyone was waiting for this trailer to come out.
I mean, it looks very interesting, but it does, I gotta say, when you see the name Chappie, the first thing as a mother, I would think, oh, great, I'll take my kids to that. That doesn't look like a kid's movie.
Well, Chappie is like in a Wall-E kind of
exactly,
way.
It's Wall-E, but
not like
the word looks like futuristic and very,
It's dark, and Hugh Jackman is playing a very mean guy, which is so dark.
And what else?
What else? Well, actually, Laura Dern and Jude Apatow are combining their forces to make a movie, a female football.
A comedy? Yeah, a comedy.
No.
Yes.
A comedy about a female football fan. So it would be written by Pam Brady, who's the author of one of the author of South Park. He would be writing the script. And female football comedy. Jude Apatow, after the huge success of Bridesmaids, said women have to be the new comedy leads in movies.
It was Bridesmaids and even in some ways knocked up, but yes, good. So Laura Dern.
in some way, he's in all his movies. His wife is playing always this lead, and she has a very strong part. And usually in comedies, it was always
usually in
guys,
films and in life, it's usually always guys.
Exactly, and we're even Ghostbusters now is going to be only female leads.
Exactly.
Expendables is going to become
female leads. Now, all we need is just women to lead the world.
Even animation, Frozen.
Look at us this morning.
And Frozen was two chicks.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. Sisters, yeah.
So I don't know if it's a trend or if it's really just a representation of how girls are taking over the world.
We should. As we should, exactly.
Or we buy more tickets, I guess. It might be a cynical financial decision.
That's why they created the romantic comedy at the beginning, because women were buying tickets.
Well, I'm glad we're moving to women in leads that are powerful and funny.
Yeah.
And that's the way it should be. Leticia, phenomenal. Thank you so much. As always, we had an all-woman studio for one part of the show, which is always something that I welcome. And when we get back, a journalist claims she was deported from Israel due to her political views. We will take a closer look. Before anything else, of course, let's hear some more of the morning headlines. Good morning, and thank you for staying with us. November 6, 2014, I-24 News Morning Edition, the place you should be. Our next story raises the eternal debate about the distinction between the freedom of speech, freedom of the press versus political views, something that's very hard to decipher in the Middle East. Federica Marcy, a freelance journalist who describes her journalistic career as a freelancer in the Palestinian-occupied territories, claims she was deported from Israel because she didn't write anything positive about it and is banned to enter the country until 2019. To begin with, we're very happy to be joined by Federica from Beirut, Lebanon, by freelance journalist Federica Marcy. Good morning to you, Federica.
Yes, good morning.
And first of all, thank you very much for joining us. In studio, we are joined by Israeli columnist Karni Eldad. Karni, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Now, Federica, thank you so much for being with us this morning. I want to hear your story. You claim that essentially the Israeli, well, in the airport, when you came here, when you covered whatever is going on here, you were writing something that was deemed unpopular and are not allowed to return to the country till 2019. What happened to you at the airport?
Yes, so I arrived at the airport this December, and my name was Googled, and the Israeli border police started reading the articles, and they also asked another border police officer to translate them, so they really wanted to see their content. And the last question I was asked before being deported and before spending 3 days in an Israeli detention center was, did you ever write something positive about Israel? Now, I don't think that it's my duty as a journalist to write something positive about any of the parts. I'm just there to report what I see. And second of all, this shouldn't be something that has to do with whether you're giving me a visa or not, because in a country where there is freedom of speech, this should not be an issue.
No, completely and very rightfully so. You know, obviously on the journalistic level, we went back to the airport authority and, of course, to the Israeli government press office. The airport authority claimed that, you know, you gave arguments back that did not make sense and that you were not a journalist. But journalism these days, you know, is something that we can't really say that only somebody who's affiliated to an organization is a journalist. You have been published in several places, haven't you?
Yes. I have been published in a monthly magazine and in online news outlets which do not fit the criteria for the GPO card because, for example, you have to be published in a weekly magazine. So I did not fit the criteria for the GPO, but nonetheless, I was just going there to ask for a tourist visa like anyone else because I'm not officially a journalist. As you said, I do not have a press pass, and my name has been Googled, and they have found my articles, and they have really argued, you know, that I was writing something against Israel, and that was the main point. And of course, I did not say I was going to Ramallah, because Ramallah for the Israeli government is the same as saying, you know, I'm affiliated with terrorists. You can't just be a reporter, genuinely interested in what is going on there, and, you know, decide to spend your time in the occupied Palestinian territories.
Right. And Federica, do stay with us. I want to ask you something. Karni, you're an Israeli writer, columnist. No secret you're affiliated with Views of the Right. But there is an argument for journalists to come in, also foreigners. And I think nowadays, you know, there are so many journalists that write online, you can't really deem somebody a journalist only if they're affiliated with a big organization or with a weekly. I mean, we live in the age of the internet. Doesn't this type of behavior by the Israeli government actually put a dent in what journalists write about Israel at the end of the day? I mean, we purport to be a country of freedom of speech.
True. I believe that freedom of speech is very important, and in a democracy, it's one of the most important things, and I will fight for Federica to be here and to publish her views. The thing is that she's a liar.
Why?
Because I spoke with the Israeli authorities, I spoke with the Ministry of Internal Affairs, and they said that never throughout her questioning, she said that she was a journalist. They asked her, why is she returning to Israel the 4th time? And she never said anything about being a journalist in Ramallah. They had to look her up in Google, and then they found out she was a journalist.
But
and
why
they said,
does she have to state, her return to, what she does or what she is?
When people ask you in the border, if you want to go to the United States, will you lie your way in? No, you will say the truth. I'm a journalist in Ramallah, and they would let her in. I spoke with a spokesperson for immigration, and she said there is no boundaries. There is no law, no regulation.
I'm wondering if this is a form of punishment then, because sometimes, when I go to the United States, granted, I'm an American citizen, but when I go to Europe at times, they ask me, what are you here for? I say business or pleasure.
True.
Right.
So if you say the truth, and the truth is okay with the rules of that country, the laws of that country, so why wouldn't they let you in? There is no one tells you what to think or what to write in Israel. It's a democracy. And me, for instance, if somebody told me what to think or what to write, I would scream my way to the Prime Minister. The thing is that this person did not say the truth throughout her questioning. Now, why did I suspect? Why did I even ask the Ministry of Internal Affairs? Because I read the article she wrote, and it looked really weird. Because no one in the immigration sees articles that people write. It's not the first thing. It says denied, or she rose the suspicion. Al Jazeera is here. Al Jazeera is clearly pro-Palestinian, pro-terror. But they're here. They're interviewing members of Knesset.
Yes, but this is then just a question to you, Federica. You are not you're not the first person to be deported and actually denied access, are you? When it comes to journalists?
No, of course not. And I would like to say two things. So, first of all, my journalism should have nothing to do with whether you issue a visa, because in a democratic country, no matter how bad my journalism is, perhaps, but I'm still free to write for Al Jazeera, which I never did, by the way, but anyway, I'm still free to write for whoever I wish. And that should not be something, that prevents me from entering a country. And second of all, when you say, I am not questioned when I go to the United States, that's because the United States do not question whether you're going to Tennessee or whether you're going to Washington. Everyone is free to go wherever they want. And the Israeli system is forcing me to lie. I have been forced to lie because I know so many stories, and you can find them in the internet, of people who actually said, I am going to the occupied Palestinian territories. And the Israeli border police replied, okay, then you're not welcome in Israel, and they have been deported. And there are so many stories like this, you can't just walk there and say, I'm going to stay in Ramallah, I'm going to report from there. And by the way, I was a journalist, I wrote some articles, but who tells you I was lying when I was saying, I do not have a press pass, I'm not officially a journalist, I'm not obliged to say if I have published some articles last year. I was generally coming there to visit some friends and have a cool trip, first of all, because I'm a freelancer. I don't know whether I'm going to publish something in advance or not. So.
No, valid point in those respects. We're also here with Tony Grant, obviously, who deals with anything and everything press, and you wanted to say.
Well, just one quick thing, the issue of freelancer versus staffer aside, which is not to poo-poo it, because I've encountered the same situation in the past myself, but my issue with this is, in this headline that we saw there, and she says that she was kept out or whatever for her pro-Palestinian journalism. What happened to the journalistic principle of objectivity? So if you're going in from the get-go saying you're pro-Palestinian, that's okay on a personal side, but professionally, you've got to keep it objective. Whether you're freelancer or staff, there's two sides to this conflict.
But that I would beg to differ, because I think we live in an age where it's very hard to, everybody has an opinion. Journalism is almost like a Facebook status. Fox is fair and balanced. MSNBC is, MSNBC is the other one. I mean, that would be, but that's why we are married, because we argue. So there's that.
But you see my point.
So, no, I see the point. I see the point. I definitely see the point. But, Carney, this is a question because I've worked with the foreign media for many years. I was the Sky News bureau chief in Jerusalem for about 6 years. We had encountered a lot of problems of getting people in and out of the country, and sometimes on a whim, completely on a whim. I mean, wouldn't you agree that if that type of behavior is instituted by the government press office in Israel, that actually works against international coverage?
Of course, but I think that it's not true. I know that there are so many journalists here, maybe 1,000 journalists, foreign journalists in Israel, and most of them are not pro-Israel. And no one asks them, did you write anything pro-Israeli? Did you write anything pro-Palestinian? No one cares. I mean, I wish that everyone was loving Israel and donating to the IDF, but I know that that doesn't happen, and it's a democracy, and everyone can say whatever they think, and I will fight for their right to say that. But you just need to say the truth. She invented a cousin, for God's sake. She invented a cousin in Haifa, and she writes it in a blog. So.
But Federica, your argument is also that you were feeling scared by the interrogation at that point, wasn't it?
No, I wasn't feeling scared about the interrogation. It's just that you cannot enter Israel saying the truth. And then I'm blamed because I tried to do my job through another way, because I cannot possibly go there and genuinely say I would be deported straight away. Right. So that's not, you shouldn't blame me, first of all, for this, because it's the way the system is that forces you to lie. And second of all, it's not a democracy, because if we're having this conversation right now about whether I'm objective or not, this is not a democracy, because in Italy, they don't ask you, did you write something against Berlusconi, and therefore you're banned. Freedom of speech has to be granted to everyone, no matter what they write and say in a democracy.
Connie, you wanted to say?
True. Freedom of speech should be granted to everyone, and to Federica as well. The thing is that she even used her way to be deported as a weapon against Israel. Israel never tried to stop her freedom of speech, to limit it. They would let her in if she would have said, I'm a journalist in Ramallah, as Google says. I'm a journalist placed in Ramallah. Come on, welcome. You're a journalist in Ramallah. But the way she wrote it, as if Israel deported her because she's pro-Palestinian and we're not a democracy, and it's another brick in the stone against Israel.
So should journalists have agendas, or should they be just covering the news? I mean, that's
a $1 million question, I think, in the day of the internet, of can you even publish something without having a personal point of view? I mean, you can't. But
that's not the question. The thing is that everyone's here. Everyone from Qatar is here. No one is asking them if you see an Arab and a Jew, who would you prefer? No one. It's not a question. It's not a legitimate question. Journalists from all over the world, very pro-Palestinians, are here, and they're welcome.
Okay, well, at least the one thing that we did manage to do is actually have a discussion, all four of us, and I think that's progress, because, I mean, we're all about being optimists, right?
Very good.
Exactly. Federica, thank you so much for joining us from Lebanon, from Beirut in Lebanon, and Carney, thank you for being here. We have such a short time right now.
Do we have time for politics?
Yes.
American politics?
Yes, please. Always.
Okay. And,
thank you for being so patient.
Well, patience is a virtue.
It is a virtue. Go ahead. Yes. Two minutes for
2 minutes.
Go.
Well, the elections, of course, there's so many things that we can talk about regarding what's been going on in the United States. And pop culture, in terms of graphic imagery, graphic design, is also playing into this. You know that famous Obama Hope poster?
Yes.
Now it's got new versions. Check out the cover of Time on the left. There's Mitch McConnell.
Oh, that's nasty.
Yeah, and then there's the Nope.
There's the Nope.
Hope went to Nope.
Oy.
The best part of this is that after the election, Obama put in a call to Mitch McConnell, but he had to leave him a message.
No.
Because apparently the phone call wasn't taken at the first.
The first one.
At the first.
It's like, I don't need to talk to you anymore.
Yeah.
They
will talk, no doubt, but. Yeah,
wow.
This is what a shift. I mean,
it's a major shift. And now, this, I think somewhere during the break, I read something about Obama saying that, he's going to try and work take Congress into consideration.
But still do his executive orders and reminding them that he's still in charge.
If they want to or if they don't.
Yeah.
That was kind of the
so they should think very carefully.
Fun times in D.C.
Good times.
Do we have time for one more?
Yes. Mia Love. Of course, Mia Love, again, Washington Post. She is the Republicans' first black congresswoman, and she's 38 from the great state of Utah, which is 60% Mormon, 1% black, and she's a black Mormon. Yeah, not that. So that's great.
That is phenomenal.
You know,
that is phenomenal.
The image has been going around Twitter. You know, it's a big deal.
No,
on many levels.
It's a huge deal. And actually, there are a lot of women in Congress this time around. I got to tell you, there's like 100 women in Congress.
It's really, people are shifting their views. What's Republican? What's Democrat?
Are, but
you know,
a lot of women want. I can say that because I'm a woman. You know, like we're the only ones who are allowed to make jokes about ourselves. The only thing about it that a lot of the women are Republican, and they're they ran on a platform of anti-women rights. Yeah, but that's
another show.
That's another show. That's another show.
Pippa Middleton was also in Utah recently.
Really quickly.
Yeah, she's going to be hosting a correspondent on the Today Show.
No.
Yes.
Oh my God, they got royalty on the Today Show.
But she's not going to talk about royalty. She's going to talk about health and lifestyle issues.
We need a royal on the show.
Let's call Camilla Parker Bowles.
Yes. Darling, fabulous to have you with me as always. And of course, don't forget to check us on Twitter, Facebook, I24 News Morning Edition, the place you should be, and where you should start your day tomorrow morning, as you should be doing every single day. That's it for us. Have a good day.